Welcome to Biology 20A. This is part 1 of chapter 1, which is, as you can see here, an orientation to the human body. We're literally starting on page 1 here of a book that is by Elaine Merib and thousands of pages long. This is a reasonable representation of a member of our species. And there are some things to consider here in this representation of a species that in some ways is about 2 to 3 million years in existence, beginning with Homo erectus, who left the forest and entered the grassland, sort of as a new free agent, as it were, and then more lately has become Homo sapien, a slightly newer version of Homo erectus, okay, which was sort of the beta version of us. And notice that what's interesting about no longer being in the forest is that we no longer have feet with hand-like features like the chimpanzees. Our toes are shorter. We have an arch. You can't see it very well, but we have an Achilles tendon, which is quite long. We have a body that is able to stand erect and to proceed with walking and running. We do not have fur, so to speak, as the way and the manner in which chimps or gorillas have fur. So we cool our bodies very efficiently as persistent hunters out on the grasslands. We have nuchal ligament in our neck that allows us to turn our head and scan the horizon. Another interesting feature. So we are a completely unique species entering into a new landscape, so to speak, from the forest into the grassland. One could say that the grassland is kind of winning the competition. We need to back off a little bit if we'd, how shall I say, like to have an interesting continuation to our league play in the future. And so one of the things that we're going to have to consider here is that as a life form, we are unique also because we're multicellular. And the normal situation for life over these past 3 billion years or so is unicellular life. And it's only been a very recent development that we have multicellular life. And so we have maybe 40 to 50 trillion cells here. Normally we would be considering only a single cell as a life form, but as a multicellular organism we have to consider 40 to 50 trillion cells arranged in this high-rise condominium here. And we have to consider the, how shall I say, conversations of these 40 to 50 trillion cells, which is quite a lot of permutations, and that there should be coherent internal dialogues with perhaps 300 different tissue types, with perhaps that many different types of unique liver-developed growth factors resident in all of the tissues to perform this, how shall I say, incredibly complex experience of coherent internal dialogues. That's going to be our mission, is to become oriented first to cellular life as well as more or less simultaneously to multicellular life. And so I'm flipping through the pages here to arrive at the idea of maintaining life, and I'm looking at page 4. And they're going to list over these next pages the necessary functions of what is required of even unicellular life. Okay, what is required is the maintenance of boundaries. So taken from the cellular perspective, we have membranes that are going to separate intracellular life from extracellular life. Intracellular life is unique in that it's very rich in potassium. Extracellular life, at least in the human body, is rich in sodium. There's a profound difference between intracellular and extracellular life. There's movement, the ability of cells to move, relocate, and appropriate an environment, and the substrates of life, very important, is movement. Responsiveness, that is to say, sensitivity to the environment, sensitivity to what is a substrate and what is a toxin. So to be able to manage one's, environment through sensibilities and excitability. The ability to take on nutrients, essential nutrients, and to repair, restore, maintain. We'll be talking about that in the homeostatic aspects of our organism as well as in cellular life. We have to be able to digest the nutrients around us. There has to be a metabolic process. In the digestive process, part of metabolism is not only the breaking down of substrates and nutrients into individual substrates. We have to then have a biosynthetic pathway that begins with simple portions, the units of substrate, and to build products. Okay, also a part of metabolism is the flow through. So we have to be able to have the synchronicity of appropriation and the synchronicity of elimination. And of course, excretion is that part of elimination that maintains the flow-through patterns that are required. You have to appropriate and you have to remove. Okay, and then there is a steady state that comes as a result of that. And then finally, through growth, there can be replication. Life wants babies. Life wants the next generation. And so we're going to be learning about that option, not only for individual cells in the mitotic and the meiotic sense, but there's also going to be the option for the multicellular organism to reproduce from an individual cell and to then restore its, 40 to 50 trillion cell format as a high-rise condominium that we call Homo sapien. Okay, so then there are the various survival needs that are going to be discussed here. I'm going to give you a quick list of nutrients and essentials that make it possible. Possibly the single most essential nutrient is oxygen, and the next most essential nutrient after that would be water. And then there has to be an energy ingredient, which is going to be based on glucose. We're going to be discovering in our nutrition chapter that in addition to glucose as the carbohydrate of interest, there's going to be two lipid molecules, basically omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids that make up membranes, particularly found in the membranes of our food, which would be green leafy vegetables. You don't normally think of essential fats as coming from green leaves, but in fact, that's where it comes from. Fish don't know how to make omega-3. They are incapable of synthesizing it, much as we are incapable of synthesizing omega-3. So where the heck does it come from? It comes from green leaves in the ocean algae, and on Earth and the landscape it would come from green leafy vegetables such as spinach, although seaweed would be a nice addition to the diet. And then there are certain vegetables and other food items that are rich in omega-3. Since about a third of our brain is composed of omega-3, one better take a close look at where that comes from, and I'll have a handout for you in that regard. Okay, and beyond that, we need the 8 essential amino acids of the 20 that are available. We need the coenzymes of vitamins and minerals. And so there are a number of items here that are of interest to us, and we'll get more into it as time goes along.